Hi, welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. And once again, outstanding guests. Don't touch that dial. Whatever you're doing, this is going to affect you sooner or later. We have Delegate Michael Vaughn from the 24th District, and he's interested in alternative energy. You can't tell me. Everybody out there want to save money. And alternative energy, this is the way to go. Welcome to the Ed Brown Show.
Thank you, Mr.
Mike.
Brown. It's good to be back.
I'm telling you, boy, when I saw this opportunity here for a small business forum, I said, well, Mike is working with this alternative energy thing.
Absolutely.
And I think it's too bad what happened, but what I want to do is get some information from you and some history about your Paris trip. And you know I got my sidekick here too, Edwana. All right.
Well, it's good to be here, Mr. Brown. Well, actually, what you're referring to is a piece of legislation that we had in this past General Assembly session, just concluded April the 9th. This was a piece of legislation that was part of Governor O'Malley's priorities for the General Assembly. Over the years, I think we've all experienced rising energy costs. And certainly as legislators in the state of Maryland, we are looking to try to come up with solutions to reduce those costs. And one way that we can do that is start looking at alternative sources to the more traditional energy sources that we use now, our general electricity and gas. This idea that we dealt with this session was dealing with offshore wind energy as one of the alternative energy sources. Now, I'm a believer in alternative energy sources. There is no single alternative source that's going to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels or lower our energy costs. But I believe if we have a balanced portfolio, then we can see a reduction in our energy costs and we can see a reduction in our energy bills over a time period. Right now, some of the things that we are considering in addition to wind energy, there's always been talk about solar energy, there's talk about nuclear energy. And I believe having a healthy complement of those and other sources as well would help to reduce our energy costs. This past session, there was a bill that was reintroduced. Actually, the governor initially introduced his wind energy bill last year. However, the bill did not pass last year due to some working parts that needed to be ironed out before it was accepted by both the House and the Senate. It's a long process. Dealing with wind energy is something that's new to Maryland, though it's been happening in other parts of the world, absolutely, for quite some time. The bill that we dealt with this year, once again, was a remake of last year's bill, but it addressed a number of issues that were brought to the forefront last year, and we were able to take a closer look at it, and we found that this year's bill was more appealing than the previous year's bill. Oftentimes in Annapolis, it takes a bill 2, 3, sometimes 4 years before it can pass both chambers, because oftentimes there are nuances, there are questions, there are things that aren't quite clear, and we need to make sure that we've vetted
whether it's important to the people or not.
Oh, absolutely.
Alternative energy is important to everybody.
It's important
no
to every one of us.
No matter what level you're on. Tell us about your experience in Paris with this on the same subject.
Well, last year I was fortunate enough to go to Paris with a group of legislators from across the country. The trip was sponsored by the National Conference of State Legislators. Actually, I was invited as a participant representing the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. Actually, there were 2 members from NBCSL. Along with myself, there was our president, Barbara Ballard, who's a representative from Kansas. We were the guest of nuclear energy company Areva. And the reason that we went on this trip was once again to gather information, insight, and understanding how France, who has been a world leader in nuclear energy for the past 30 years, has been able to successfully.
That's far ahead?
Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't have a drone, though. That's one thing.
Well, they may not have a drone. That's correct. We lead the world in drones, but certainly they are a leader when it comes to nuclear energy. And it was a very good trip. I was there for 8 days and had a chance to visit their nuclear reactor with a nuclear plant where they have 2 reactors and they were in the process of building a 3rd. So it was a very, very enjoyable trip. It was a very learned experience. And it gave me an opportunity to get a better understanding that maybe someday we can do something similar here in Maryland, because as you well know, we have Calvary Cliffs,
Right.
which also has a nuclear reactor here in Maryland.
Right.
Well, what about the alternative energy items like the?
Well, what I also
Tell
found
us
out
a little bit. How did the Europeans actually look at that, and how far are they away as far as solar and atomic energy?
Well,
is
what's
concerned?
interesting in Europe, they have benefited by using not only nuclear energy, they also use wind energy as well as solar energy. So their portfolio is more complete when it comes to alternative energy sources. Their energy costs are substantially lower than what we pay here in the U.S. So that's why it's good to go visit places that have proven success in using these alternative energies and trying to see if we can emulate the same success here in Maryland.
Yeah, Delegate Fawn, I was saying you've gone to France and you looked at their program. So there are models out there that we can emulate, that we can model
Oh,
our
absolutely.
alternative system by, so we don't have to reinvent anything.
No. No, actually, I mean, I think the greatest form of flattery is when you try to emulate someone else's success. Right. And going back to what we did in the General Assembly this year, there are other examples here in the United States, particularly along the eastern seaboard, where offshore wind is starting to come of age. And certainly we're trying to utilize the natural resources that we have here in Maryland,
Right.
and that we are right along the Atlantic seaboard. Certainly, we're right in the Atlantic Ocean. We have waters deep enough where we can instill windmills out in the ocean. We have just enough breeze to be able to blow those windmills where we can generate some alternative energy. Certainly, what we've done in the General Assembly is that we have set a goal of trying to have a 20% reduction by 2020 in Maryland. That's a reduction from traditional energy sources. And certainly we recognize that we can't do it solely by using one source versus another.
So
but
it's
there
a
has to be a
combination
full,
of the three.
Exactly.
Now, what about solar now? You're talking about being located for the winds and the cliffs and things like that. But the sun's everywhere.
Right. And
I
certainly,
mean, why can't we advance that?
well, actually, we are using solar energy. We do have solar energy companies here in Maryland. As a matter of fact, I'm familiar of a couple of places in Tacoma Park. As a matter of fact, there are a couple residents that use solar energy in their private homes in the Tacoma Park and Montgomery County area. So solar is already here. There has not been a wide expansion yet of solar energy.
Why can't they commercialize it? They do the electric company and all of them. Why can't they go up and we worry about the tree limbs taking the lines down and all of that. I think that's one of the problems. Storm comes along and you got a problem with that.
Well, I think it's a delicate process in that we have to win people over, if you will, no pun on the word win, but basically when it comes to alternative energy solutions, these are things that are fairly new to our constituencies here in Maryland. And I think it's a process where you have to introduce the concept to people.
Education.
Education, exactly.
Yeah.
We have to educate people on these
why don't they
sources.
spend some money on education to make sure that the people understand this is for their benefit?
And we are in the process of doing that. It's still early in the process here in Maryland, particularly when it comes to wind. You previously mentioned solar. That process is underway. So there are dollars being expended right now in the state of Maryland for education, for people to understand the benefits from solar energy. Now we need to do the same for wind. We need to do the same for nuclear.
Well, what about the costs? Now, of the three, which do you think is less costly?
Well, I don't know that any of them are less costly, particular in the beginning. I know that they all are very expensive in the beginning because you have to set up the facilities.
Well, why can't the government, actually fund it? Because after all, the government is the people. Take the people's money and actually get involved with that.
Well, we are attempting to do that, but as you stated, funding right now is a very touchy subject. Not only in the state of Maryland, but across the country. Certainly, we're now seeing a reduction in various fundings because we are still in the throes of a very deep recession, one of the like that we've never seen probably in the last 50 or 60
But recession
years.
is everywhere. It's over in Europe. It's everywhere. It's not just United States. To prioritize what I feel, they should prioritize for the benefit of the people. When I say people, I'm talking about people not working 9 to 5, because after all, every dollar that no matter what level of government you're involved in, every dollar the guy that's working 9 to 5 foots the bill.
And I'm glad you brought that up. You make a
Yes.
very good point, because certainly when you're talking about alternative energy, because they oftentimes come with a substantial price tag, then it is going to be important that all of our people, our constituents, understand that there is a price to pay for that. As a matter of fact, prior to the wind bill being rolled out again this year, there was a poll taken. And according to the results of the poll, 60% of Marylanders favored wind energy, and they would be willing to absorb an additional $2 on their energy bill, going toward the development and implementation of wind energy. So you're absolutely correct when you say that this is a bill that's going to be footed, that the average person is going to have to pay. And I think it's a good point that we're making here today, that people need to understand that there are certain costs that are associated with improvements in our standard of living.
Right, because what they fail to realize is around the world, not the country, around the world, commodities like electricity are very scarce.
Very
See,
scarce.
most of us think, we go and turn on the light, turn on the toaster, it's automatic, alarm goes off. But in my travel, I've been around the world twice, and many a times I say, hey, boy, the main thing I miss is those comforts of electricity, like
Absolutely.
you got to wash a certain time of day, you got to shave a certain time of day, you got to do certain things, and even go to the bathroom a certain time of day, This is which we really don't feel, because of the fact that the money is being made with this oil, the oil heat and everything, is that thinking in terms of getting the 3 alternatives together and let the people decide. Tell them what it costs.
Right.
And I'm sure, just like, what do you say, 60% of the people in Maryland?
According to the poll that was done based on wind energy, yes.
What's holding it up?
Well, right now, the thing that's holding it up is that this year's bill did pass the House of Delegates where I serve, but unfortunately it did not pass the Senate. So consequently, this bill has died 2 consecutive years.
What does that mean?
Well, that means that we're going to have to, or not we, but certainly Governor O'Malley, since this was his bill, it's going to have to be reintroduced again next year when we return to the General Assembly. Hopefully, whatever the issues were that prevented the Senate from passing this bill out of their committee, that can be resolved.
Well, do the people really know what the real issue is? What is the real issue? Is it money?
Well, once again, I don't know what the issue was, that they could not get enough senators in the Senate Finance Committee to pass the bill out. Certainly, as individuals, everyone has a different perspective on things, so I can't speak to the senators that did not vote for the bill. Unfortunately, I haven't had any conversations with them, so I don't know what it was about the bill that prevented them from passing the bill.
Well, as citizens, what could citizens do
Well,
if they wanted? Could they, their constituents, write their delegates, call them? What could they do?
Absolutely. As a citizen, I mean, as an elected official, we all answer to the constituents that voted for us to represent them. So if you are an individual in Maryland that is supportive of wind energy as an alternative energy source, then you need to find out who your senator is, if your senator voted for or against the bill, and you need to have that conversation with him or her to make sure that they understand your position and understand what your wishes are when it comes to perhaps supporting this bill.
Well, you're speaking of education. Just what type of education and when are you going to start this as far as the wind energy is concerned?
Well,
because you got we got 1 year and it comes back again.
It will come back again in January, but I would think that the proponents of this wind energy bill are probably still today, as we're speaking, probably meeting somewhere.
Yes.
Taking up the cause. Once again, try to understand what were the factors that prohibited the bill from being passed in the Senate, and trying to see if you can address those issues. I mean, for example, last year, I'll be clear with you, I wasn't on board with the wind energy because there were things in that bill that I didn't find particularly appeasing, and more importantly, I didn't think they would be beneficial to my constituents. For example, we all realize that energy comes at a cost to the individual ratepayers. In last year's bill, there wasn't a consistent number that I could take back to my constituents and say, by passage of this bill, your energy costs are going to rise by X amount of dollars per month. Last year's bill had a projection from anywhere from $2 to $6. And I didn't think that I could really go back home and tell someone that I supported something, not knowing what the cost was going to be, but giving you a range of $2 to $6. But we were fortunate enough that we worked with the governor and his staff, and we were able to work that out, and it came out to a cost of $1.50. But this year's bill would have been $1.50 increase per month to the ratepayers. So I think that's something more palatable. That's something that I can really sell. Yeah, something I can tell my constituents definitively that this is what the increase is going to look like. So once again, there are things in the bill. Everyone looks at it differently. We need to really try to, I guess, get our arms around what the items are or what the issue is that will prevent this bill from coming out of the Senate next year.
Well, sometimes the way the bill is presented and what is tagged on to the bill has the reason why the bill may be great, may the greatest thing. Then someone say, well, in my district, well, I want to build this road from here to here, or I want the subway to come out here, and then unless you guys tack this onto that bill, I'm not going to vote for it.
And
they forget about what's good for the people.
You're right.
You know,
You're
and they just say,
right.
well, hey, look, say I'm not going. If you tack this on there, so I can drive for my house and not have a light, just like they're going through the thing now with the radar guns, you know. People are painting the signs and painting the cameras and things of that nature, you know, because this is the group, this is something that they are protesting. As far as the alternative energy, do you have committees where people that are listening and see this show can call and be active with it?
Okay. Well, all of the committees that we have in Annapolis during the General Assembly are open to the public. So as a citizen of the state of Maryland, you are invited to come down and testify.
But I'm talking about organized to the point that, for instance, the different districts, they would say, hey, look, they take a busload of citizens down to the beach, or take a busload. Why not have a drive on where each district, that's, you know, that they would have a bus, and that shows solidarity, you know what I mean? A bus, well, I want to have a bus, and hey, you pay for everything else, you can pay for that. Have a bus and a sign saying, we're going down to the hearing on alternative energy. Well, I think those type things make people rise up and say, hey, I think I want to be part of that. But my experience in 10 years on the planning board is that we sent notices out, you know, for the hearings and everything, and the people, they just don't show up unless they stimulated. If they and stimulation comes negative and positive, you know, you can find pros and cons for it. But I think that is so very important for everybody. This is not partial. For everybody to get involved. And it's a crying shame that they weren't able to drop their special interests for the people. And this basically, a lot of people I've talked to, this is what they're saying, that they forgot the people along these alternative energy, and in place of some special road or project in their district. And this is what the people out there, they got to understand, this is the way it operates. If you don't get involved, then you don't count.
Right. Well, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Absolutely, I saw a lot of support from our citizenry
Yeah.
in Annapolis around this particular
Right.
issue. As a matter of fact, there was a rally sponsored by the Sierra Club.
Right.
And hundreds of people showed up to rally and show their support.
Yes.
So once again, I don't believe the lack of passage through the Senate was based on lack of engagement or involvement from the citizens, but it just failed for lack of votes.
Yes.
And certainly we can all surmise as to
The influence.
what the influence or
Right.
what the catalyst was for the lack of votes, but we won't know for certain. The only thing that I would encourage and suggest is that anyone who is interested in wind energy as an alternative energy here in the state of Maryland, you need to reach out and contact your respective legislative leaders and let your voice be known. Speak to them, write letters, emails, texts, however you communicate, and let it be known that you would like to see them support this.
Well, do they have a department or some area that individuals can get information, or do they have to go through their elected officials?
No, or there's a lot of information that's on the government website, maryland.gov.
Well, everybody don't use computers, just like, I'm one of the guys, the iPod and the iPad and all this stuff, just like I was telling you. I say, hey, when you got your iPad, my son told me, say, you don't carry an iPad. I say, hey, you got to get an iPad. So what about those people?
Well, for those people who are not internet savvy or who do not have
It's
access.
a lot of us out here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Then once again, the telephones are available.
Yes.
You need to reach out to your representatives via phone or however you contact them, whether you just stop by the office. But you need to simply reach out to your elected representative and let your feelings be known.
Good. Tell us a little bit about those notices you
what's
have
going
there.
on in Prince George's County? There's the 7th Annual Heritage Film Festival held at the Prince George's Community College this Thursday, today, April 19th, and Friday, April 20th, and there's free admission. They want you to bring a non-perishable food item. Hope to see you there. Then there is a sheep and llama shearing at Old Maryland Farm, and this will be held April 28th, 2012, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., and the admission is free. Also at the Public Playhouse, performing for the performing arts, Dallas Black Dance Theater troupe will be there Friday, April 27th, Saturday, April 28th, and Sunday, April 29th at 4 p.m. Please contact them. There is also an expo and book fair, April 27th, April 28th through the 29th, 2012, and it's free to the public. It will be held at the Washington Convention Center in Washington, D.C. So hope that you can attend either of these events.
Great, fantastic. Parting word, Delegate Vaughn. What about the small business forums? When is the next one?
Well, right now we're in the planning stage, but hopefully before the end of the summer, we'll be able to put together a small business forum to talk about initiatives that we have in the state of Maryland to try to energize small business and entrepreneurs in Prince George's County and in the state of Maryland to get them involved in whatever business ideas or whatever business that they may have.
So that would be this spring, you're saying?
It's going to be before the end of the summer. I don't have a definitive date yet, but certainly.
But anyone want information, they can, your
contact
website.
my office.
Contact your
Contact
office.
my office either by phone, 301-858-3691, or if you're on the internet, you can shoot me an email at michael.vaughn@house.state.md.us.
It's great to have you on the show.
It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
This subject matter, we can't let it die because it's so important to everybody. And just like we are certain projects that we have in the #1 spot, I think America is looking for a project like this. This is going to save everybody some money. You know, we spend money on everything else. Why are we behind Europe as far as alternative energy. We shouldn't be. We're ahead of everybody else and everything else. Okay, then. See you next time.